You are listening to 99.1 WQRT LP Indianapolis, and this is Create Here. Produced by artists and curators from Big Car Collaborative, Create Here is your place to listen to conversations with people making intriguing, innovative, and impactful things happen on the cultural front in Indianapolis, Indiana, and beyond. Find out more and access additional episodes at WQRT.org.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Create Here. This is Shatay Marsh, co-founder of Big Car and director of programs and exhibitions at Tube Factory Art Space. I'm joined today by Jessica Dunn. She just opened an exhibit with us, Particular Fragments. It's in the Jeremy D. Ephraimson Gallery, April 5th through May 26th. Jessica Dunn, also known as Jessica on Instagram, is a multimedia artist known for her immersive, dreamlike worlds combining video, sound, and physical installations. With a scientific curiosity, she finds inspiration by investigating the natural world as well as psychological realms of consciousness. Dunn graduated from Heron School of Art and Design with a double major in painting and sculpture. Caught between 2D and 3D practices, she found her calling in 4D art, including experimental animation, performance, and experiential works. With a medium-agnostic mindset, Dunn utilizes a wide variety of materials, allowing the concept to drive the process. Lately, Dunn has extended her practice into filmmaking, including short documentaries and narrative animations. No matter the format, Dunn's work invites the viewer to open their perception to explore new realms of reality. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm so happy. I have never had an exhibit like yours with a lot of different, I'm also gonna, like, they're like light installation works. Mm-hmm. So have you had these many pieces together before?
I have not had this many collective works in the same room, probably ever, maybe since my thesis show. But at that time, I was doing a lot more sculpture works and painting works specifically. I was diving into video a little bit, but now I'm fully immersed in sound, animation, and video. And it's so fun to see them all come together within the same space, along with those other interactive installations.
And it makes sense to me to have all these works together. A lot of times people wouldn't, but it does, given your expression and interest in memory and how memories are connected and how we interact with our memories. It feels like we're walking through your brain, maybe in a way, when we walk into the exhibit. Can you tell us more about those pieces and your work with memory?
Yeah, memory has just been on my mind a lot. I've been thinking about how my brain processes memory now that I'm a bit older than I was in like my 20s, my teens, my childhood, etc., and how much our crazy constant influx of media has kind of abstracted that or obscured that. So I really like video as a medium, and something that I do a lot in my works is create this obscuring or abstraction within the work. And to me, that conveys like how memories are kind of fading away and how our perception of memories kind of changes over time. And I have a few installations kind of themed around memory specifically, if I can go into talking about specifics.
Yes, please do.
Sure. So one of my works, it's the one utilizing the Caliphone Card Master. I have all of these kind of sound cards immersed in air. It's called Sounds of Obsolescence, and it collects all of these sounds that are memories from me as a child. Some of my favorite sounds growing up, like the PlayStation startup sound. Some other video games that are kind of deeply, set back in my brain. Sounds that I'm kind of afraid are becoming obsolete, and those that I might not be able to recall like I once did. But also recalling those sounds just by me recording them all and collecting them, it like made memories kind of flood back into my brain. All kinds of memories, those connected specifically to those sounds, but then also those that are disconnected.
What do you associate with the PlayStation sound? Is there a particular like moment in time for you?
Yeah, actually, my uncle got the PlayStation kind of early on, and I was so excited to go over to his house. And I remember sitting on the carpeted floors, turning on the PlayStation that first time, and then you get the just kind of flooding you. It's kind of like the THX sound, and the way it kind of just goes right at your face, and there's so much depth to it. And I was so excited to play like this new piece of technology at the time, which is the PlayStation 1. So I was pretty young, but it's just one of my favorite memories, and kind of those old games I'd be playing.
Yeah, it's also like a form of time travel in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a way, a lot of these pieces are time travel. So in this one, Sounds of Obsolescence, people can pull down a memory. It's hard to explain verbally, but they're on these cards that have a magnetic strip that function like cassette tape. So you record over the sounds. You can record your own. So the viewer approaches this piece. They see all of these hanging memories all around them, and they can pick and choose and play it through this machine, and it plays it back to them. And there are two sides. So there's like a side A, side B. It's teacher or student, because this is an old teaching tool that I'm using for this installation, and they can play the sound that's on each side of that track, which is really fun because there's kind of like a call and response, and then people were able to record their own throughout this whole course of the exhibition too.
Yeah, and you told me that you made those cards, right? You said they were real hard to find and expensive, so you made your own cards that record and that hold these memories, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a few that were given to me that I just stumbled upon. I ran out very quickly, I think after recording about 30 to 40 sounds, and I knew that I had to make more because they cost like $200 on the internet. There's this big insurgence of people buying this machine so they could make like lo-fi hip-hop beats to study to. So you can actually make your own using VHS tape. So I just cut out cardstock to the size, and I cut out the VHS tape and I used double-sided tape to adhere it in the correct spot, and then it works just the same.
Oh, wow. I also really enjoy how you hung that piece. There's a spotlight, and it's pink, correct? Is that one pink, I think?
It changes colors.
Yeah, I think when I've been down there lately, it's been pink. So I like how you hung that, and it's making shadows, and, you know, you walk up to it, you're attracted to it anyway because it's of just how it looks visually. I mean, I was like, what's this? And then you were going into explaining the piece to me. So yeah, it wasn't just simply putting this more analog technology out there for people to interact with you. I feel like there's a real thoughtfulness in how it appears to people through your work. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I really, a visual element is super important to me always, even though what I do is conceptual. And I really wanted to communicate this idea of kind of like a thought cloud. We talk about the cloud a lot when we're talking about data storage with technology. So I wanted to kind of play that with the kind of cloud that we have in our minds that we can kind of pick and pull from. And I also like the feeling of weightlessness. So a lot of the pieces are suspended from the ceiling too. And it feels like it's kind of raining down, and you can just kind of pick one out of thin air and play it.
And you also are referencing the eclipse in this show, and you did perform during the eclipse here at Tube Factory, so thank you for that. But do you want to talk a bit about some of the pieces that are referencing the eclipse? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like to think about the eclipse and also moon phases and phases in general. I like to think of time as kind of cyclical. So that's like a recurring theme that I explored, and because it aligned with the eclipse, my mind has been on the eclipse, so visually that theme has kind of come through too. So I have this one piece right when you walk down the stairs. It's done on 35 millimeter film, like a film reel, like video. I took an old trailer that I got on eBay, And I took like a section of it that was all black, and then I scratched out the eclipse shapes so that it turns into an animation as you're walking down the stairs. And I overlaid it onto other footage that I created on 35 millimeter. It's clear leader. It's what you feed the machine into to pull the film reel through. You can paint on it. And I digitize it myself sometimes, but I actually send it to a person in Colorado. They're called the Negative Space, and they have really affordable digitization for 35 millimeter film, 16 millimeter, and also 8 millimeter. So I sent it to her, and she digitized it, and she sent it back, and then I turned it into the animation.
So another thing about this show, I always love working with more established artists with more experience. There, you decided what went in the show and how it was laid out, which is I love. So can you tell us why you chose some of these pieces and how you decided to lay it out?
Flow is always super important to me as a person who works in sound and video and narrative works. So I really considered the flow in the space. I really wanted a statement piece as you walk down the stairs, and something calls to attention that cyclical theme of time and the eclipse. So that's why I started off with that piece. And then I kind of naturally flowed around with other pieces that I've created. One that's called Memory Cycle. It's an excerpt from a visual album that I created called Sleep Metamorphosis. That's next in the queue. And then I go around to another 35 millimeter piece where I was scratching and distorting found footage, and then moving around the room through the various installations. I wanted people to naturally kind of flow through, interact, and then move on to the next one. Kind of like they're navigating a dream of sorts. Yeah. And
then there's the piece that you have the leaves. And I actually don't know what... I guess it's skeleton leaves and glass wheel piece. Is that skeletons? No, that's the music television.
Oh, it's called Skeletons.
Okay.
I have.
What are those?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't familiar with. I was like, this is really, because it spins this disc and projects. It's really an interesting, beautiful piece as well, and circular.
Right. So the circular element kind of comes back. These are really cool projectors. They're called Solar 250s. I borrowed them from my friend Jen Banks. Shout out to Jen Banks. She helped me with installing some too. We collaborate a lot. But we always wanted to make our own wheels for the piece. They spin. They're on motors. So it has a lens too. So it projects and it throws light and casts shadow onto, in this case, those faux walls. But these were used in a lot of like 1960s, 1970s psychedelic light shows for concerts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because you can have the wheels have liquids inside of them, so they turn and they spin and they project quite large if you want to, depending on the throw distance. But I always wanted to make my own wheels, and so did Jen, so we ordered some blank wheels. And then I created the skeleton leaves. You boil them down like real leaves in washing soda in a water concoction until it breaks down the leaves except for their skeletons. So I did that and then kind of collaged them on the wheel, fixed them with epoxy, and then those are what are projecting onto the cube.
Yeah, I hadn't ever seen that 250 projector before. I was like, whoa. That was exciting for me to learn about as a curator.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's neat. The other thing I was wondering about with this is, you have all the TVs and you've the TV installation that is, let me see, the music televisions is the piece. That's what it's called. Is that right?
Is that the clear TVs?
No.
Another one, it's called
TVs.
the pink TVs. It's called Somewhere in the Back of My Mind.
Okay.
Yeah. We can reset that if you want.
It's okay. I'm a flawed human being. It's just how it is.
Aren't we all?
Yes. So somewhere back in my mind, you have the 7 CRT TVs, glitched video and projection, and they're painted pink, and then they're on like pink foam. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us more about that? And some of the video, like I do remember the skeleton animation from when you did No More, No Place on Monument Circle, and that was projected on the IPL building. I think if that's the same animation, but one of the TVs has that loop, right?
Oh, actually, it's not. It is different.
Oh.
But that was really fun though.
Yeah.
So yeah, this piece. Somewhere in the back of my mind, it's 9 pink CRTs, which I happened to stumble upon. My friend, his wife, used them for like an art installation, and he was getting rid of them. And I was like, I want them because I have a channel. It's called Pink Noise TV. So it was just perfect. I considered repainting them for the show, but I didn't. And I'm glad that I didn't because I also have the corresponding pink cassette tape players that are in another installation. And then we found that pink foam flooring actually at the tube. And I was so happy because I was looking on eBay and trying to get some, but it was just kind of pricey. So you just had them. So I took them and I set them up as like the faux floor there. And we have, a sky projecting behind the TVs. But what's playing on the TVs are actually these fragmented pieces of childhood media that are really key to me, but I've abstracted them greatly. I edited them down to recurring themes and kind of archetypes that I see in a lot of children's media from like the 1980s, 1990s, maybe early 2000s. And then I glitched them. So I was hoping that people would be watching them all at the same time, these fragmented kind of pieces of childhood media that maybe they would pick out what it's from, but maybe not. Yeah.
And what are some of those archetypes and symbols that you've noticed? And tell us more about those.
Yeah, there's like a lot of the theme of book of knowledge, which is really interesting, or kind of like a Pandora's box that you're opening. Lots of symbols of keys, rainbows, clouds, but there's always that element of evil lurking behind. And a lot of times you see it as like either slime or like this amorphous kind of ether kind of shape. And those are things that I see a lot. Also sparkles, which I love to incorporate in my work too, and animate, which I incorporated elsewhere too, with some of the 35 millimeter, kind of creating those like sparkly effects by scratching into the film. But yeah, those are just a few, to name some. There's always an underwater scene. It kind of aligns with human experience when you think about it. Kind of these symbols that we see in the themes that are recurring in any kind of storytelling.
So to make these works, are you like noticing these things and you're writing them down? So what kind of research for you is going into these works?
A lot of these works, I really just went back and rewatched all of my favorite childhood media. Bunch of like old VHS tapes even. My friend Jen and I will get together, we'll watch like VHS tapes and we'll just glitch them for fun. And then in that process I was like, I think I see something here that I can use for an actual piece. So I went in and I watched all of those old films. I used 9 that I watched a lot. And then just in the process, something that I do is make a lot of lists. So I did first make a list of all of my favorite childhood media, cartoons, VHS tapes, all of that. And already what's built into my process are these hangout sessions with my friend Jen, who I mentioned earlier. And she and I just watch old VHS and we glitch them and distort them just for fun. Sometimes we'll record so we have some visuals that we can use for live music. But in the process, I was thinking a lot about the recurring themes and archetypes that we see in the media. So I kind of made a list, and then what I did was just kind of edit all of the films down into these really short, abstract visual blurbs. And then through that process, you kind of see those recurring symbols come through.
One thing, I can't remember what year I met you, but I've known you and seen your work since I think you were a student working on your bachelor's degree. So it's been a while. Mm-hmm. But one thing I've noticed throughout your career as an artist is you do collaborate a lot. you have a lot of partnership in your works, and even when you were first starting out. Can you talk a bit about, collaboration for you and in your practice as an artist?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I do love to work alone, and I do a lot of the time. So I feel like when I get together with friends, I find that my consistent friendships are based around artistic collaboration. So I have a lot of collaborations with other musicians and visual artists, and it's always fun to come together and kind of riff off of each other and kind of play. And I feel like through that you can find a lot of growth and just stepping outside of what you normally would do when you're bouncing off of another person.
Yeah. And is it ever hard, because I, of course, work in the arts, I know how it can be. Do people ever, when the difficult thing about collaboration and being an artist, I think, is sometimes there can be competitiveness or resentfulness. Does that ever happen, or have you managed to avoid that in your career?
It's something that I've definitely seen a lot of, but the collaborators that I've really found and have been collaborating with, especially over the past few years, have been just amazing to work with. One of my collaborators, Landon Caldwell, who I worked with for Reverie Garden for the Loom at Newfields, he and I actually have a piece that we collaborated on in this show too. It's the audio for one of the pieces. It's on the 2 flat screen monitors with the animations that look like cyanotypes. We had a performance together last August where we performed for his Hidden World series at Dear Mom, and I recorded all these tape loops. And I remember he wanted to have them back, and I was going to record them, and I didn't have time to, so I was like, oh, I wish I had those digitized or something like that. And guess what? Landon just messaged me. He was like, hey, I turned those tape loops into an album. I kind of collaborated and improvised off of them with the modular synthesizers I have, and now we have an album. So
wow.
It just came across super natural, and I've been finding that with a lot of my collaborations lately. It's just natural. We're just friends and just like working with each other. Some other pieces in the show, like the music televisions, those are those clear CRTs and monitors. Those have some of my friends' music on it, including Kyle Bullender and Michael Moskaliuk and his Early Reflections project. I've always loved making visuals for music. I would make music videos every day of my life if I could, if I had the budget for it. It's so fun to make visuals and then pair it with music and see everything come to life.
Yeah, can you talk more about making music? You do perform on occasion without a visual element, is that correct? Or yeah, I usually have some kind of visual element that I like to play with, like light. It's just everything with art. So a lot of times there's at least a lighting element that I like to work with, or something that is visually interesting, like for the performance that Michael Moskaliuk and I did for the eclipse. I used the Caliphone Cardmaster, which is in the gallery. I also used it for the performance, and there's this nice visual element of pulling off these big loops that I made and then carefully putting them onto the machine and then having them go. So there is somewhat of a visual element, but sometimes I perform with live visuals too. And then I was wondering, when it comes to, a lot of women who are working, there aren't a lot of women working in tech-oriented arts. How was that experience for you? You're one of the few women in Indianapolis that I know who are working in this manner on this level. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I'm really proud to be doing what I'm doing, and I'm glad that I've gotten there. Ever since I was a child, I've been super interested in technology. I was always taking things apart, building things, trying new things. And so it was just natural for me. But it can, of course, feel isolating a bit occasionally. And there are even there are women out there making music and, working in tech and arts. But there's an underrepresentation, I feel like, in our music scenes around here. So it can kind of feel isolating a bit. for sure. But it's great when you get to meet other people that you have that natural companionship with and you feel their support.
And you've found that in Jen, who is Jen Hughes?
It's Jen Banks.
Jen Banks, yeah. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, Jen's awesome. She is a professional in the AV world, and I know she experiences a lot of the same. She's like one of few women who work for the company she works for. And, we've worked together on a couple gigs where we felt people were being pretty condescending and patronizing and not trusting our expertise. And I can't help but to wonder why.
How do you cope with that? Like, if you're telling, if you were explaining, maybe, you do also teach at Heron. So does that ever come up with your students, and how do you cope with being treated that way in a way? Because it's just women in most power positions do end up having to deal with that in some way.
Yeah, I tend to really speak my mind and be assertive, which doesn't always vibe well with everyone, especially if they want you to be kind of quiet and submissive. I'm just not. And I'm happy to do it, but it can be painful at times. Teaching is awesome, and I'm so happy I see so many talented students of all kinds, and it's wonderful to work with them and support them all, no matter what their gender identity is.
Are you able to, or are you close to being able to make it as a full-time artist? And would you opt to still do things like teaching? Is teaching just something you want to do right now, or are you close to just being able to do your work as you want?
Yeah, well, for the past decade, I have been working as a full-time artist, but doing a lot of commissioned work then. So I had to do a lot of work for big corporate events or big corporate advertisements or something like that. And it was a world that I wanted to step away from, even though it was validating, I get to do my art, full-time. It's kind of, it can be stressful, and I was tired of stressing out over things I wasn't passionate about. So I got asked if I was interested in teaching at Heron, which is my alma mater. And I said, you know what? I think I am interested. And I was doing the financial math, and I was like, I could just say no to a corporate gig twice a year. And I would have enough, at least I know when my paychecks are coming when I teach, as opposed to when just you're a full-time artist, you never know. You can make all of your year's money in 2 months. It's just really inconsistent. So that consistency was something I was looking forward to, as well as when you're teaching, you kind of have to rethink the way that you communicate and filter all of this experience and knowledge that you have on a relatable level. And in turn, that I found it's really strengthening me personally as an artist and really getting me to think about where I come from and how to share that with others. And it's incredibly fulfilling. I love to see how the students kind of grow over the course of the semester, and it's just really rewarding. So it's something that I'd like to stay doing. And with that, I'm trying to balance more of doing the teaching part-time at Heron, and then just going full into doing more exhibitions and working on my films and stuff, which was just too hard to juggle with trying to do all those corporate gigs on top of more cool experimental gigs.
Yeah. Now, can you tell us about some, I saw your piece with Landon at Loom. That was, can you talk more about some of your works that have been out in the public, your exhibits and whatnot?
Yeah, I can talk about some of my works that I've been really proud of over the past few years especially, which has really encouraged me to go and be more of myself, which is the most important thing as an artist. The piece for the Loom at Newfields was a collaboration with Landon Caldwell, who led the audio component, but we both co-directed the piece. It's called Reverie Garden, and it spans our 30,000 square foot gallery where it's completely immersive projection and spatial audio. So we worked on that together. It's all inspired by nature, which is something that we both incorporate a lot into our practice. Which is also turned into Landon and I collaborating on a short film, which we are wrapping up currently. It's an experimental nature documentary focusing on native species.
And where will people be able to see that?
Screenings will be announced over the summer, but around the state, and then we'll be submitting it to festivals. And then on that note, I have been working on some like short films. There's an animated short film that I just wrapped up for a director, Curtis Bowersock, called Physical Matters. And that was really cool because I could kind of lean into my style for a 7-minute long animation. And that is showing at Film Fest currently. It just showed in Bloomington, Arizona, and I think we're waiting to hear back about Indie Film Fest. And then some other nature documentaries that I've worked on creating some animations for in collaboration with Justin Shimp. We worked on Hellbender, which is a really fun documentary to work on.
Can you talk more about your interest in nature and, is it addressing climate change? And, also, I just want to piggyback that with, if you are addressing climate change, I do know lately when I talk to artists, there's a real pressure to fix these problems. Do you feel pressure when you're addressing these issues to fix it, or is it enough to point it out?
As much as I would love to fix all of our current problems in the world, climate change, etc., I feel like something that I can do is call attention to these subjects, which are all kind of incorporated and affected by climate change. The Hellbender Salamander for that film by Caitlin Calhoun, Teardrop Pictures, that I created some animations for. It's kind of sad to see this creature that we've had for so long here in Indiana. Now you can only find it in one small section of the Blue River, thanks to the agriculture industry, global warming, temperatures changing in the rivers. It is something that I think about a lot, but something I can do is bring that to people's attention. So that's something that I feel comfortable in doing. Yeah.
I also think artists a lot of times are tasked with this, we have more information and access to information than we ever had before. And I think it's difficult for people to choose, we can't have on what to focus our energies into changing, and I know a lot of people feel depressed and overwhelmed. Do you ever feel that way? And because it's just not natural. We're like, oh, there's wars and there's climate change, and it's so depressing. But then, what helps you when you see what's happening to, the Hellbender? What helps you work through that emotionally?
Yeah, I do feel pulled in so many directions all at once. I felt that way for a very long time. And honestly, that's kind of why the show's called Particular Fragments, because I'm focusing on these particular fragments of my life and memory. I do feel overwhelmed a lot, and I do experience anxiety. And part of it is just this information overload and not knowing what to focus on or what to do, or how I can possibly help, the world's problems. So I do find myself kind of hyper fixating on certain areas and kind of focusing and devoting my time to a specific subject to kind of raise awareness to that. For example, with the film that Landon and I are working on regarding native plants and native species, kind of drawing attention to them and showcasing their beauty and showing people that you can make a very small change that will make a big impact for other creatures or people.
One thing I think I also wonder about is some artists I talk to are positive about living and working here, and others feel like it holds them back. Can you talk about working here in Indianapolis and why you've decided to stay thus far, and if you plan on staying?
Yeah, I mean, I like Indianapolis. I think we have a lot going for us here. I prefer to have like a strong home base. So I did buy a house on the Near East Side, and I really like to live there, beautify my house. I have native plantings. I'm trying to turn my yard into a nature preserve. But anyway, I like having that solid home base with a yard with a large enough space to work, and then I like to travel a lot, and living here allows me to do that. And I do feel like it's a little easier to feel connected to a community when it's smaller. Sometimes, like in a larger city, you feel so overwhelmed. There's so many people, you don't know who to go to. It's kind of hard to make friends initially. So I've chosen to stay here, really kind of nurture my friendships and collaborators that I have, and try to do what I can here and hopefully make that voice heard elsewhere in the world too.
What are you hoping to work on next? What's your next project? Or do you have something in mind outside of what you mentioned with Landon and the films that you have coming out that hopefully we'll be able to see?
Yeah. I have a band called Gumi that I have with Michael Mascaliuk, my partner. So he and I are actually working on our full-length album this year. And I want to turn that into a full-blown visual album with animations and everything for the whole album, every song. So that's like a shorter term goal that I have, but something that I really want to do, that I've always wanted to do, is to create some kind of immersive space in a video game kind of setting, or creating like an experimental film where you kind of choose your own adventure and navigate an actual like virtual space. That's something that I've been kind of thinking about for honestly a decade, and I just haven't had time to. But that's something that I would love to do. And I've been wanting to create an animated horror movie and do the score for that, and probably collaborate with my other friends on that score too. But something that I've always just kind of wanted to do, and something that I'll definitely be going for.
I'm so excited to see all those things. That makes me wonder, do you tend to focus on like one piece of work, or are you like almost like circuit, training, moving from like, you're like, I'm going to do this right now. Oh, I'm done here. I'm going to go over here and work on this piece. How's your workspace? What's your studio like? Are you focused, or are you moving through a circuit maybe?
Yeah, well, so for the past year and a half, maybe almost 2 years, I've been feeling like I'm spinning plates. So working on a lot of things all at once and multitasking, but my preference is to focus on one thing at a time, or kind of divide it up by days. So I have my teaching days and I have my off days, and I kind of try to do one project at a time, because that's how I like to focus. And I naturally just have a hyperfixation that I cannot get out of my mind, that I just like work on all hours of the day until it's done, and then I forget about it completely and I move on to the next thing and I forget that I even did it. So that's kind of how I work.
And what's your workspace like? What's your studio space like, where you're doing most of your work?
I wish I had a larger or dedicated studio space. I have an office space in my house, but it's like 9 feet by 8 feet. It's very small. So I have a bunch of totes. Everything's very organized, and I have everything on shelves, so I can take out my project in the tote, set it down on the table, and that's what I focus on for the time being. And that's the only way I can like keep sane, just because I have so much stuff that I work on, like so many cables and everything for the video and the music. I have so many like materials when it comes to art, because I'm working with like nature and leaves, but I'm also painting and drawing, and I'm working on the computer a lot too. So I have a nice iMac setup with a Cintiq that I work on for most of my professional work, doing animation and video.
Is there any book or film or other artist that has been especially influential in comforting with your work currently that you'd like to share about?
Oh, that is
so many.
Oh gosh. As a whole, I really love watching movies. Like, a lot of my favorite artists are directors. So that's been like a big inspiration for me, whether I'm making art for a gallery or I'm making like a video piece. I'm also incredibly inspired by music, all kinds of music. I'll be listening to orchestral music one part of the day, and I'll be listening to experimental electronic the next. So that always kind of keeps me going and keeps me pacing myself. A book I read about a year ago is Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake, and that really heavily inspired me when I was starting to work more heavily with the theme of nature, getting to more specifics. The concept of fungi and how it's everywhere, how it's like the oldest thing in the world, how we've maybe even potentially evolved because of it. It's super fascinating to me, and kind of thinking of like the networks of the fungi, kind of as like our mental neural networks in our brain, and also thinking about networks in regards to data. And all of these themes kind of come together in my show. Particular fragments is kind of thinking about that network and how communication happens. That it was just really interesting to me on a scientific and abstract level, and it's kind of made its way into my art in bits and pieces.
Wow, and it kind of circles us back to with Mario Brothers and the PlayStation. So
I did play a lot of Mario also as a kid too, yeah. On my grandparents' Nintendo.
Yeah, PlayStation is Nintendo. I didn't play video games. PlayStation
okay.
is, you have to tell me PlayStation is Nintendo, right?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, PlayStation is different. But
okay.
Both great.
Well, video games. We circled back with video games.
We did, yeah. Well, really, that's where the interactivity comes to play in the exhibit. And any art that I do, I really want it to feel interactive. I love when people can touch the art, play with it, interpret it in their own way, or leave their mark on it. So I'd like to have that within particular fragments too. And it comes along with everything was interactive for me as a kid, playing the games on the computer or on my PlayStation.
Yeah. Well, is there anything you want to be asked that I didn't ask?
I've noticed that a lot of people like the piece in the movie room.
Yes.
So I think that might be a cool one to talk about.
All right, let's talk about the video room piece, Move Your Eye. Correct? Yep.
Yeah, so Move Your Eye actually came from the visual album that I created, Sleep Metamorphosis. But this concept was kind of thinking about every time I saw a circle in art history or other public domain imagery. So at the time I had my assistant, Michelle Andrea, who was living in Barcelona. Shout out to Michelle, because she helped me collect like thousands of images that all had circles in them from art history references or botanical drawings, religious iconography, and we cut them out, and then I edited the video together, and it's like this constant flashing kind of stop motion video of circles. So just like the Somewhere in the Back of My Mind piece, where I was thinking of recurring visual themes, I kind of did the same thing with that piece. And the audio for that piece is a track that I made that is very hypnotic intentionally. It uses binaural audio, and it has subliminal messaging in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's all good subliminal messaging. It's supposed to make people feel good and like be in a meditative space and to be able to process information. Because also it's inspired by EMDR, which is a therapy technique where you like look at a dot, you like follow it, kind of like how you would perceive hypnosis, but it allows you to process trauma or other things that you need to work out and process in therapy.
Yeah, maybe I should go in there every day and spend some time in there.
Yeah, maybe just think like, what can I think about? What's a moment in my life that I really need to process? Go in, follow it with your eye. It's called Move Your Eye. And then a lot of people have found it pretty hypnotic and interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to have to spend more time in that piece for sure.
Oh, and it's stereo. So if you had it on with headphones too, it's very activating both sides, which is that binaural audio component.
When when we go downstairs to turn on that exhibit, I always hear I love the talking in it too. And that piece, we keep the sound on all the time. So it's essentially always going in the gallery, even when Tube Factory's shut down. But yeah, I like walking around the space and hearing that particular piece because it is the loudest piece in the exhibit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some other audio pieces that you can kind of catch glimpses of. Like one is the 35 millimeter piece, which this is actually pretty interesting. On the left side of the frame, you can see like the different frames in the 35 millimeter film, but there's like a sound wave that you can see. And when it was digitized, it digitizes the audio too. So it's all cut up because I've edited it myself. I was scratching the audio a bit so it gets distorted. But that is something that you can kind of hear around the room. Every now and then you'll catch like, what's the ear version of a glimpse of that audio and kind of pick different pieces from around the room.
I like that ear version of a glimpse.
Yeah, whatever that is called.
Now I need to know, but
Me too.
I think that's good enough. I think you could say ear version of a glimpse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, or we can invent something.
Yeah, it sounds good though.
Yeah.
Just invent something, let me know, and I'll edit it back in this.
Be like, oh, by the way, we invented a new word and it ended up in the dictionary.
Yes, we did. Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Trying to think. Oh, there's a kind of fun fact about the clear TVs.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, my boots. The clear TVs in the gallery, it's for the music televisions. It's the one with the music videos on it. They're clear because they actually came from prisons. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They have the inmate number etched onto it and everything. I bought it because it's very Y2K aesthetic, which I'm kind of calling back to. And I always wanted the clear tech when I was, a kid. I was like, I want the clear phone. I don't even use a phone, but I want it. I had a Nano baby that was clear. Visually, it's super nostalgic to me, but those actually came from prisons, and they call it prison tech or clear tech.
How did you get them?
Well, I got it. No. I found them on eBay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those are really... I had never seen them before, but like I said, I'm not super familiar with a lot of different tech, older tech, newer tech. Yeah, they're pretty... That's really interesting. So it's etched into the top, the prisoner numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And also, the reason why I like the clear tech is also I work with circuits. I build and solder circuits and circuit bend, like the cassette players. So it's kind of fun to see the innards of the technology that we see, and we don't really think about how they work, right? But when you see them visually and you see the microchips and you see all of those connections, I just find it really inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really cool.
It can be like Bjork with a TV. It's a little city.
That was a good Bjork voice.
I could probably do better, but yeah.
We talked about totality because that we talked about the eclipse, but I think we didn't talk much about how I remember it.
Oh, okay.
So do you want, Jessica, tell us about the piece, How I Remember It.
The way I made this is I bought 2 just cheap film trailers off of eBay. I think I got them between $5 and $10 a piece. It's like a 2-minute long film trailer, and it comes on, the reel, kind of heavy in your hands. But what I do is I clip out segments that I find visually interesting, or I think I can distort in a really interesting way. And then I cut them up and I paint on them. I scratch directly onto the film. You can scrape off the emulsion to create shapes. So you'll see like the spider in it, amongst some other shapes. And then you can also use bleach and that starts to remove layers of the emulsion, which a lot of those are green. When you look at it, you'll see green kind of blobs. That's where I bleached them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is really interesting. And for me, it was kind of fun taking 2 or 3 different sources of media, different film trailers, and kind of constructing this really abstract, dreamlike narrative with it. And another fun fact on how I made that was it's really a pain to splice film if you don't have a film splicer, because they have to be perfectly aligned, or else you can't feed the sprocket holes through the machine. It'll get jammed. So I actually designed a film splicer and then had it 3D printed at the Timmy Lab.
Wow.
At Heron, where I work. I worked with Haley Smith. Also, shout out to Haley Smith for helping me translate my design into a 3D model, and then 3D printed it. And it made my life so much easier. It saved me hours of work splicing the footage, because it allowed me to perfectly line them up completely. And then you just tape them together with just Scotch tape.
Wow. I hope you trademark that and like get rich.
I think it's a very niche realm, but I could probably share it online and be like, hey, look at this thing I made. And then maybe sell it. I don't know. Or just sell them the plans. Yeah. But it's fun how all of these different forms of art, in my case for the gallery, come together, because actually the cassette players that are hanging, the 9 pink cassette players, it's called Headspace. There are some headphones you can listen to. Those all play tape loops. So the concept of, splicing kind of comes together too, and kind of piecing together fragmented memories and ideas. So that comes through in how I remember it, Headspace. And then for the Eclipse performance with Michael Moskaliuk, I actually made loops with the Card Master cards. Mm-hmm. I just created a really long piece of cardstock and a really long piece of VHS, and then looped it around perfectly. So I'd play it and it would just loop on itself.
Oh, wow.
Which that's something we could talk about, is the Eclipse performance.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm going back a little bit, thinking about money and your work in the arts market. I remember Corey Archangel saying, are you familiar with Corey Archangel's work? And this is to do with video games. Again, he had just taken the, I believe it was Mario Brothers, the Blue Sky, and he was selling that. And it was interesting to me at the time as a younger, curator, and I don't really deal art. I'm not really an art dealer, but I'm still interested in the market. And you had the option where you could like download a piece for like $50, or you could pay $15,000. And of course, some people were opting to pay. It might have been even $50,000. I don't remember the pricing. I don't even know what year it was. It was early on in my learning. And how do you, just thinking of that and think about your working with tech, and they were fungible. What is it?
Funko Pops?
Not Funko Pops.
Oh
no, the artwork. Fungible. How do you view your work and fitting into capitalism, I guess?
Yeah, well, I despise having to play the game, but I have to in some ways. I tend to do paintings every now and then, which people like to purchase, which is wonderful. It's really hard to sell video work, and it's nearly impossible to sell an installation. And because of that, it's even hard sometimes to submit to group shows or something like that, because they just won't accept video. Because I feel like it's really hard to sell. I have sold video. You can put a nice frame on a TV and have a Raspberry Pi play the video perfectly on loop, and it makes it easy for people to own a piece in their house. If anyone wants one, hit me up. But really, and for the show, I didn't even want to think about selling my work, because I don't really like to make work because of that. I was really trying to have fun with it, but it is something that I have to do, which is a frustrating thing to have to do. And I'd prefer not to do it, but
yeah,
capitalism, baby.
I know, that's where we live, the heart of it.
Yeah. I mean, and our art has value. It really does. It's just hard for me. And sometimes I even feel guilty charging people for my work, because really I just want to share it. I enjoy the process of making it. I kind of get out this thing out of my system, and I want to let go of it anyway and share it. I always appreciate when I can support myself doing what I love. But I'm always feeling pretty conflicted about it, to be honest. And anytime I have to price a piece on a gallery for the tag on the wall, I'm just like, I don't know. A lot of times it ends up being, what could I let this go for? And be happy to not have it anymore, which some things I care less about retaining and some things I really want to keep. So they ended up getting a higher price on them because I want it. But yeah, it's just like a game I don't really like to play, even though I've learned how to play it because I ran a business for 10 years and still do. That's where commissioned work comes through for commercials or films or other collaborations. And I've also done some installs in like corporate spaces too. So sometimes those get the bills paid, and then it's awesome. Sometimes the client really lets me be free and have fun with what I want to do for the piece. So those are the best.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't love the commercial side of it, and I rarely do it when I'm working with art. I don't like it. I want people to be able to make what they want and not be constrained by thinking about sales, even though I know it's like a balance because they need to eat, so yeah, it's difficult space to work in and figure out. I think it feels bad a lot of times too for some artists who are like just putting their kind of heart and soul into it, It's like, how do you sell a piece of yourself, So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty easy for me to let go of my work, really, because I tend to, I hyper focus on one thing. I get it out of my system, and I don't even want to look at it again, even though I can look back on it and really enjoy it. So yeah, if someone wants to purchase it, I'm happy to sell it to them. But I always feel so weird and awkward about the money situation. Even though it is a game I can play, I just prefer not to. And that's honestly why I like to teach too. It's not, it helps sustain me, and it gives me peace of mind and freedom to kind of think about my art more in a sense of play and something bigger than participating in capitalism and making a quick buck. And that's why I just could not even jump on the NFT game.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. NFT.
Yeah.
But I think I might have blocked it for my memory. Like, I did have a few, some artists, especially some photographers that I worked with, had NFT works. And I was like, well, there was Corey Archangel. I kind of feel like he, made everybody think about all that. So,
yeah, it's a really interesting concept to think about. For sure. And I found the NFT thing interesting. I just didn't
jump on.
I did not. I always feel kind of, and this is to no offense of anyone who did, but sometimes I feel a little corny if I jump on like a quick fad. And generally with those bubbles, they burst, right? We saw that with crypto. We saw that with NFTs, and it ended up hurting a lot of people, and a lot of people got ripped off, and it just, it hurts to watch all of that go down. People having hopes of purchasing art in order to make it make money. Yeah. And then that didn't end up working out for people, as we saw how that happened. And it worked for a select few who were early in the game, and it didn't work out for anyone else. And it's just the horrors of capitalism we see. And it hurts when people try so hard to fit and mold in order to acquire the currency, and then it just doesn't work out, or they lose everything in the process. It's painful to watch.
Yeah it is. So you were getting ready to tell me though about another piece.
Oh, just the eclipse performance.
The clip. No, the eclipse
Yeah,
performance.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I was super honored to be asked to perform here for the eclipse. I collaborated with Michael Maskaliuk, who is my partner and also my bandmate and Gumi. But we also do some more like kind of ambient performances together. So he and I worked on that. And thematically, we based it off of phases, cycles, loops, and kind of like the wax and wane of human emotion and anticipation. So we're thinking about the eclipse. You know, a lot of people are getting all doomsday vibes, which we didn't feel, but we wanted to kind of explore a kind of happiness, a lightness beginning, then kind of going down into the darkness and curiosity of the eclipse and kind of coming out of that with like a fresh perspective. That's kind of what we're leaning into thematically within the work. Even though it's abstract, it's music, but we tried to structure like the chord structure and all of that based off of those moods, emotions.
And, you know, people can see a bit of the performance on the Tube Factory Instagram. And I think you have some video footage as well, right?
Yeah, I plan on making a post.
Yeah, if people want to see that, what is your Instagram? Can you share that with the listeners?
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram at Sessika, and that is SESSEKA. And
also, what about your website? What is your website?
My website is www.sessika.com. Same spelling.
Awesome.
And actually, that's what I used to call myself before I could say my J's.
Oh.
My name was Sessika. So I kind of just leaned into that because there are so many Jessicas. Such a common name for my birth era. So I kind of stopped responding to it and came up with a pseudonym pretty early on.
Mm-hmm. Well, now that makes me wonder why you didn't change your artist name to Sessika.
Sometimes I do, and then sometimes I feel like galleries anyway will list it as my full name. Okay. So, I mean, it's something that I've always been torn about. Or like sometimes I feel like
it's like your brand, like what's my brand?
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it feels kind of silly and corny, but I like to be kind of silly and playful anyway. Yeah. And I feel like that kind of shines through what I do. So yeah, I don't mind being called Sessika, or some people call me Sess.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listeners, thank you for joining us today. Please come and see Sessika Dunn's exhibit, Particular Fragments. It's currently on view at Tube Factory Art Space. If you are listening to this after May 26th, there will be documentation on the Tube Factory website, www.tubefactory.org, and you can see the exhibit and our video documentation. Thank you again for joining me today and for this amazing exhibit. People are so excited about it when they come into the space. So thank you so much for allowing us to host it.
Thank you so much, Shate, and thanks to Big Car and Tube Factory. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.